Okay, we'll get started today. Thank you and welcome to the National Alopecia Areata Foundation's webinar, 504 Plan Accommodations for Alopecia Areata, Preparing for Back to School. And joining us today, Heather Tobacco, Jen Barker, and Gretchen Yeoman are joining us today to share their personal experiences. And I'm Judy Williams, NAP Support and Education Director. Before we start the webinar, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping details. We have disabled chat for this webinar session. Please post questions for our speakers in the Q&A section, and please keep your questions as general as possible for the benefit of all audience members. This webinar is being recorded, and all registrants will receive a link to the recording via email. And finally, please share your feedback with us. After the webinar, a link to a short survey will pop up in your browser window. Please complete the survey there. This webinar is part of NAF's You Are Not Alone Education and Empowerment webinar series. NAF gratefully acknowledges the support provided for this webinar series by our partners Pfizer, Eli Lilly and Company, and Sun Pharma. And before we start today's webinar, I'd like to tell you a little bit about NAF and our mission. The National Alopecia Areata Foundation is the leading advocacy organization for alopecia areata. NAF's mission is to drive research to find a cure and accessible treatments for alopecia areata, support those impacted, and educate the public about this disease. NAF's vision is an empowered community with the choice to embrace or live free of alopecia areata. To learn more about NAF support resources and research and advocacy activities, or to join us as an advocate or supporter, please visit our website at naf.org. Before we start our discussion, what is a 504 plan? A 504 plan for a child with alopecia areata is based on the Americans with Disabilities Act and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which states that people with disabilities cannot be excluded from federally funded programs or activities. It is a way for schools to support students with a disability and help remove any barriers to learning. Our panelists will share some of the accommodations their children received through a 504 plan. And now on to today's webinar, 504 Plan Accommodations for Alopecia Areata, Preparing for Back to School. We are very pleased to have community panelist Jen Barker joining us from Texas, whose son was diagnosed with alopecia universalis in 2022. Heather Tobacco joins us from Idaho. Her son was diagnosed with alopecia universalis when he was 2 years old. And joining us from Illinois is Gretchen Yeoman, the mother of a 16-year-old son who has alopecia areata. We are honored to have you here today. I will stop sharing my screen and let you tell us a little bit more about yourselves. We can start with Heather.
Thanks, Judy. As Judy said, my name's Heather Tobacco. I live in Boise, Idaho, and my son Trace, who is 12 now, was diagnosed officially at 2. He started losing his hair after his first birthday. So he started losing his hair between 1 and 2, and his doctor really had no idea what was happening. She told us that he had just had hand, foot, mouth, so he had really high fevers. She said that the virus made his hair fall out and to give it 6 months and it would grow back. I had a friend in college and she lost all of her hair her sophomore year, and still today, we're almost 50, she has universalis still. So I watched her go through the transition from having hair to not having hair. So when I saw Trace go through this, it was very similar. And I knew immediately, because I had had that prior experience, I know this is what he has. In Idaho, there are no ped dermatologists. So we had to drive 6 hours to Utah to go to a hospital to see a dermatologist that specialized in pediatrics. When he was 2, and he got his official diagnosis, but they told us, this is a very confusing disease. We don't really have a lot of information for you, but this is what he has. So in that moment, my husband and I really realized that for us, our journey was going to be about acceptance and awareness, and that this was something that was going to be part of our lives. And we needed to make him confident as he grew up. So that was really for us what we focused on. I was a teacher at the time. When he was young, I had a lot of, we joke now that we call them alopecia perks because we still get them sometimes, but we have meals bought for us. We have people pray over him. And a lot of people thought he was sick and that he had cancer, especially when he was younger. So when I was a teacher, I worked with the St. Baldrick's Foundation and we would do combined assemblies. I was a middle school teacher with kids that had cancer, and then I would showcase NAF, and we would do fundraisers and people would cut their hair, and that's how I began to get involved with NAF. Is I sent hair for wigs to that part of the organization. And Trace, as a teacher, I was very specific. He went to private school, then charter school, and then we moved into a public school that was smaller in the neighborhood we were familiar with. So our journey has been very different because as a teacher, I understood, I had seen kids. I don't know. I really wanted to protect him. So I kind of protected his education and I had the ability to do that. And because of that, he's very confident. But I also had seen what people misunderstood about seeing him. So for me, a 504 partially was so people would understand that he wasn't sick and he wouldn't always have to explain himself in school with his teachers and his new classes. And also, I wanted him to have the accessibility to a hat all the time at recess. So for myself, it was more from my wanting the 504, not necessarily from him needing the 504. So that's a little bit about me and him and why we're on it and how we got there.
Thank you, Heather. We'll let Gretchen go next.
Hi, I'm Gretchen, and my son is Kyle. He's now 16, and he was diagnosed with alopecia areata at the age of 6, and he was in second grade at that time, first grade going into second grade. And the doctor also didn't really know what was going on with him. She had thought he had ringworm, was tested for that, was negative. So we saw a different dermatologist for about over a year, and his alopecia went away until he was about 12, and that's when COVID hit, March of 2020, and that's when his hair loss started. He never had COVID, but that's when things started shutting down and school was shutting down and they were doing home remote learning at that time. So thankfully, he was in 7th grade at that time, and kids are mean. And he was having a really, really rough time with losing his hair quite rapidly. We were seeing a different dermatologist. I'm in Illinois. For about a year, he tried different topicals and the steroid injections to the scalp, and it was really painful for him because he lost his eyebrows, his eyelashes. He was considered totalis at that time. And then we saw a different dermatologist in by Chicago, and she referred us to another specialist dermatologist that knew more about alopecia pediatric dermatology. So he obviously was back in school after COVID had started, 7th grade going into 8th grade. They were just doing like a 1 day in school, 1 day out of school remote learning while COVID was still going on. And then when he was going into high school, I wanted him to be a little bit more protected because in the junior high, or the middle school, they call it now, the principal had said she would just write on his school ID that he could wear a hat or put his hoodie on. But even some of the teachers didn't see that was wrote on the back of his ID. We didn't have anything formally wrote up. I'm an occupational therapist by background, and I did work in the school systems, but I didn't work at the school district that my kids go to. So I wasn't really familiar what their process was, and I'm more familiar with other special education, individual education plans or IEPs that the school district does. And I didn't really do a whole lot with 504 plans. So when he got to going into as a freshman in high school, I contacted the principal and said, hey, look, he's got alopecia, and I just wanted to make sure that all his teachers knew that he has this condition, and I was asking that he could wear a hat, and she was very open and receptive to a 504 plan, and it was just an informal meeting that we had at our high school, and he's in a high school with about 1,200 kids. So the meeting I had went really well. He's going to be a junior this year. He's also a little bit different now. He's on a JAK inhibitor medication where he grew his hair back. He does have some spots at times if he gets a flare up. But he's not really needing a hat to wear, but it's still in place just in case, because he does get flare ups at times. So it's more of a safety net for him. He is more reserved, quiet kind of guy, doesn't like to talk about his condition in the school. So there wasn't a whole lot of, hey, this is what I have. He didn't want that. So his friends know, but that's basically, we didn't let the whole school know. So.
Thank you, Gretchen. And Jen?
Hi, I'm Jen and I'm from Texas. My son is currently, he's 7. He was diagnosed in 2022 when he was 5. It started off April of 22. He started with one spot. And then in May, I noticed that he had a second spot. By the end of June, beginning of July, the entire back of his head was losing his hair. By August 1st of 22, he had lost all of his hair on his head. And then by December of 22, he lost his eyebrows and his eyelashes. So he does have alopecia areata universalis. And he was going into kindergarten at the time. And I told his teacher was real supportive. And I actually used to go to the elementary school that my son goes to, so they all knew me. So the kindergarten year, I didn't need a 504 plan. But as we were going into his first grade year, he wanted to wear a hat. And there was, the teacher was aware of it. But the teachers at the front that for arrival or dismissal were not aware of his condition. And they were telling him to take off his hat. And at that point I was like, okay, so we're going to have to make some type of accommodations for him, because I really didn't think I needed to do that, but I'm really glad I did. But as in the process of trying to get that 504 plan at the school, during his first grade year, we scheduled the 504 meeting and it had been canceled, and we tried to reschedule, and I went up to the school to get it rescheduled. And there was just a problem with us having to reschedule it. There was, I told the 504 coordinator that I wanted to make the entire staff kind of aware of what alopecia was so that he wouldn't have a problem walking through the school in case, there was a teacher that didn't know about it. And that was kind of a problem for her. And then I could never get my 504 plan rescheduled. So at that point, I decided to research more schools. And I found a school that was more supportive. And we got him on a 504 plan right away. It was probably within his 4th day there that the coordinator had reached out to me. They were just so supportive. Actually sent them the packet that's on the NAF website for schools. And they sent that entire packet to the entire school staff. And so they made everybody aware of what alopecia was, and just a lot of support.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. I have a couple of questions for you, and I know Heather mentioned she was familiar with the 504 plan. Were Gretchen, Jen, and I believe Gretchen, you said you weren't really familiar with the 504. Who did you reach out to learn a little bit more about the 504 plan, or who was your initial contact? Jen, you mentioned a 504 coordinator. Can you explain a little bit of that? Like, how did you get to this 504 coordinator? Did you have to go through a counselor? Can you give us a little bit further details?
Yeah, I kind of knew what a 504 plan was because my oldest daughter, she's dyslexic, and so I have it for her. And so I just reached out to the school principal, or to the school, excuse me, and I just asked if they had a 504 coordinator that I can talk to. I just got on the phone with her and we scheduled the appointment.
Okay. Gretchen?
I reached out to the school principal in an email asking to let his whole schedule know because he was going to be going to different classes as a freshman. And so she had responded back, why don't we do a 504 plan, and kind of explained what that was and if I was okay with that, which I was on board with that. That way more people would know in the school what was happening, if there was a sub or whatever. It got more communication all over.
Okay. And Heather, as your experience as a former school teacher, who was your first contact, or who did you know, this is the person I need to contact at the school to get this started?
Well, like Jen, I had a situation that his teacher had him take off his hat. She actually took his hat from him on his way to recess because he was wearing it in the hallway. So then he was at recess without a hat. And so I kind of went mama bear on the principal. And so I went to the principal, but I was, yeah.
So I see a few of you have mentioned there's been what has triggered you to, start looking for an alternative or some options to support your child. Gretchen, what was your reason to try to seek a 504 plan? Was it also just for a head cover?
Yeah, he was wearing a hat, and then he would wear a hoodie over his hat. So he was really self-conscious about it, and I don't really think he would have gone to school if they wouldn't have allowed him to wear a hat. So I kind of wanted to have something formal in place because he did in middle school for the picture day, he had a hat on and the photographer made him take his hat off for the picture, not knowing that he, had his hair loss. So he had his picture taken, his hair was very patchy at that time. And he told me, because he's very quiet about things, I have to really dig it out of him to, tell me about your day and what happened. But this kind of really upset him that he had to have that hat taken off for photo day. So I just wanted to make sure that he was covered going into high school.
Thank you. And Jen mentioned she had a few obstacles when trying to get a 504 plan. What do you think was it changing the schools, or how did you overcome those obstacles? And then I'll let Gretchen and Heather explain if they had any obstacles.
Yeah, like I said, in kindergarten, it was fine. His teacher was supportive. But then it was like going into first grade. There was a lot of bullying. And then the teachers weren't being supportive. They wouldn't let him wear his hat. And my son right now currently does not wear a beanie or a hat. He'll talk about alopecia, but not really. If someone asks him, he'll tell them, what he has. But our situation was more, if he needed to wear it. And then it was just causing like his mental health to it was affecting his mental health. Like he didn't want to go to school. He was crying every morning to where he had to stay home from school because it was so stressful for him to even show up, because he didn't know if a teacher was going to address him and tell him that he couldn't do something when he thought mom already had this figured out. And so that was kind of my obstacle. And then it was trying to get the 504 plan meeting rescheduled. That was a hassle. And then the coordinator did not want us to, she didn't want to tell the entire school, like, you know, she didn't want to educate her teachers. She didn't want to educate her staff on what alopecia was. And it was just, no, we're just going to let the teacher that he has for the entire day. And I said, well, he goes to gym, he goes to music. So that's not the only teacher that he has. He's constantly in the hallway, you know, either going to the bathroom by himself or getting water. So that was kind of I was like, okay, I'm getting nowhere. My son's not getting the support that he needs. And so I just kind of researched other schools that would be supportive. So we ended up, I withdrew him from that public school and I put him in a charter school. And they've just been amazing from day one.
That's great to hear. And that you found an alternative for him. And Heather and Gretchen, did you have any obstacles with getting a 504 plan set up?
What I wanted to piggyback on with Jen too, just for anyone that might not know this, for charter schools, usually they're attached to a public school as well. So a lot of like the medical or forms or whatnot. So the 504 would still read the same as whatever school district the charter school is connected to, which is nice. We were already on an IEP. So Gretchen had mentioned an individualized education plan. Trace had speech that he was working through. So he had a speech IEP. So attaching a 504 to it was really simple because I already met and we already had that kind of dynamic going with paperwork.
Thank you.
I didn't really have any obstacles other than scheduling the meeting, which was just a matter of, it was, the school year had already started. And so that made me a little bit nervous, but it was trying to get the team together, which consisted of one of his teachers, the school nurse, the principal, and the school counselor. I believe that was it, and myself. Kyle could have gone, but he, of course, didn't want to show face to that. So it was a very informal meeting. It was a very simple process. I just took what paperwork I had from my physician stating that he had this condition, and they wrote up a plan. And my school's districts, I would say, is more relaxed about how we do the 504 plan. It's good every year. So we evaluate every year and see if there's any changes that need to be made. We can meet in person, or they actually just called last year and said, do you want to have another meeting or do you want to do it over the phone? Since we didn't have any changes and I was comfortable with, and Kyle was comfortable with where things stood on his 504, then we felt we didn't really need to meet in person. And I haven't gotten a phone call yet this year, but our first day of school is tomorrow.
Great. And Gretchen, you mentioned that you took paperwork from the doctor. Is there something specific? And then I'll let Heather and Jen also, what specific actions or paperwork should families put together, you know, so that they can be prepared when they meet with the principal or the 504 coordinator?
For my district, I think they just wanted something in writing saying that what condition he had, and then the school nurse was more interested in, like, you know, is there taking any medications that would need to be administered at school, which he does not, and just kind of having that formality, I guess, in writing that he is being seen by a doctor for this condition. And that was it. It was basically really simple on my end of things.
For me, yeah, I had to have a doctor's note saying what his diagnosis was. And then within that doctor's note, his doctor and I kind of discussed like what accommodations we wanted. And then so I gave that to, we met with the counselor, the the principal, the 504 coordinator, and his teacher. And the school actually, so his accommodation plan is actually good for 3 years, but they follow up with me about a week before school starts. And they kind of like, do we need to add anything? Do we need to add any accommodations? Do we need to take any off? And then we just kind of add or change within that, but his is good for every 3 years.
Great. And one of the other questions that we had, we were talking about accommodations. Can you explain a little bit further what accommodations your child got with the 504 plan?
I will jump on this one. Our accommodations were that Trace would always have a hat in the office. So if he forgot his hat that day, there was always a spare hat in the office. And then that somebody was just kind of making sure that he remembered his hat to wear out to recess. And then one of the things I really liked about just about 504s in general, having been a teacher, I know that if you have a substitute, you have to leave documentation of who's on an IEP and who's on a 504 and what that means for that student. Or if you're a teacher, it's in, like, most schools, if they're digital, it's in the where they take attendance. So there'd be a little notation there. So I just liked that it was going to be documented in different places, and especially for substitutes or people that may not have known who he was on a regular day basis.
That's a good idea. I didn't even think about that. So I'm gonna have to go and check and make sure that substitute knows. Yeah, thanks. So our accommodations were he's allowed to wear a beanie or a hat throughout the day. My son has really dry lips, and also his nails break. And so I put it on there that he should be allowed to carry his chapstick and nail cream so that he can put it on his nails and chapstick whenever he needs to. Also, teacher and adult emotional support, and then access to the counselor when needed. And then also he can be allowed to go and sit in like a calm corner or a calming chair. And that is just in case he's having a rough morning, kind of walking in and people are staring at him or whatever, he can kind of go just have a little reset. So those are our current accommodations.
Our accommodations are just for, he's allowed to wear a hoodie and a hat whenever he would like to. So he doesn't currently wear a hat, or I don't think he had to last year at all wear a hat, but he has that in place, and that just gave him a little bit of peace of mind, not knowing that somebody is going to be like, hey, you need to take your hat off.
Did any of you have any accommodations where they were allowed to spread awareness about alopecia areata with the 504 plan? Or when you were preparing the 504 plan, did they allow you to, meet with the teacher or the class to explain to his peers what alopecia was?
No, we did not have that in his plan. I actually brought, I had emailed the teacher and asked if my son Kason can bring a book to school, and if she could read it to the classroom. And so both teachers from the previous school and his new school were very supportive of that. And so they read the book to the class. And the teacher had asked if they had any questions about what alopecia was. And some of the students did have questions. And actually my son kind of stood up. The teacher told me that he was answering some of those questions. And so, yeah, they were supportive in that.
We didn't have it in our 504 plan, but like Jen, when Trace was younger, he's in 7th grade now. So he advocates for himself and just can talk about it now on his own. But when he was younger, we always did that when he was in elementary. We would either have him stand up, but we did contact the teacher by email before the school year started and would give more personalized information about his story. And, I'm sure you've seen the 504, but here's a little in addition. And we'd like to, be able to explain to all of the kids in the class. So that way he's not getting individual questions or people aren't asking questions and going home and making assumptions. And so, we would just say, what would you prefer? Like him stand up and talk about it? Would you like us to come in? Would you like us to send you something or, a video, or give them options? But that was something when he was younger, before he could advocate for his own condition, that we made sure that happened.
Okay. And from all the accommodations, which ones would you say was the most beneficial for your child?
Mine would be having access to the counselor as needed. The previous school that he was at actually did not have a counselor. Or every time my son needed one, they were like rotating from school to school. And so he didn't have that support. So when he needed to go have a reset or talk to somebody for support, he didn't have that. So definitely access to the counselor when needed.
Mine, I would say, would be the hat in the office, because there were a lot of days that he forgot. So knowing that there was always something at school, he could go in and just go grab it. He knew where it was, and then he'd try to remember to put it back. But that was something that
I think it was for us just that he could wear a hoodie or the hat anytime, because he wanted to do that as soon as we left the house. And at that point, mentally, it was really tough on him, when he was losing his hair, that he kind of used that as a security blanket, per se. And that's probably the only way that he did go to school at that time, would be to have that comfort.
And I have one more question before we go into the Q&A section. We've gotten several questions, and you can keep submitting them through the Q&A section. But my last question that I have for you is, what advice or tip would you offer to other families with a child struggling in school due to their alopecia diagnosis?
I would say if your child had a good friend that they could confide in, it's one thing to have a parent, but like as they get older in middle school and high school, they don't really want to talk to you about it. They'd rather avoid it. Well, maybe in my situation, not all kids, but he has a close friend that I know, he will talk about things that he wouldn't talk about his mom, talk with his mom or dad about. So if that there's a close friend maybe in the classroom that they could talk to each other about it, or have somebody aware of his situation. And I know that the friend that my son had would kind of let me know too, because I really worried about his mental health at that time, how he was really doing, because he didn't really want to talk about it. So.
I think some advice that I would give is kind of like Gretchen was saying, find somebody. We actually have a support group, and that has just been life-changing. We actually didn't realize how many children in our area have alopecia. And we've met, I think, there's like 7 kids in our group that have it. And it has just been life-changing. I mean, we meet once a month, and we either go to the park or, and it's more about the kids just getting together, and the parents kind of just talking, what are y'all having to deal with? What advice can you give, other parents? So the support group has been our biggest lifeline right now.
I was going to say similar to Jen. NAF didn't ask me to do this, but I would utilize NAF. That has been one of the biggest blessings in our journey. We've been part of NAF for 7 or 8 years now, maybe a little more. And Trace went to his first convention when he was 6. And if you can get to Chicago, if you could get to conventions, being in that space with so many other kids that are like them, and just everywhere you turn, seeing a beautiful bald head, like literally, I could just cry talking about it. Like, it's so remarkable. And they have mentors that could Zoom or talk to your kids who have been through it. But NAF has such good resources. And then just always re-emphasizing that everybody has differences. You know, it doesn't matter what it is. The size of your nose, how tall you are, the color of your skin, you know, whether your ears stick out or don't, or, you know, everyone has differences. And hair is, I have a son, and I know it would be much different if I had a daughter, I think. But you know, just really always talking about how beautiful they are, and that bald is so beautiful. So that would be what I would do.
Thank you, Heather. And we have a lot of great questions, so we're going to get started on some of these questions. My daughter currently doesn't have noticeable spots. Do you recommend contacting the school sooner than later, or my daughter is in a private school? It's private about it, mainly because it is covered, but when should I discuss it? So what are your thoughts on that?
504s aren't public. It's not like, you know, I think with an IEP, I had mentioned my son was on an IEP. IEPs are when they get pulled from class. So they are going to speech, they're getting pulled for reading intervention. It's more noticeable. Where a 504, there's nothing, it's not spoken about. It's just a protection they have. And it's a security blanket. So they can have things that maybe other kids don't have in place, but it's because they have hair, and their hair makes them feel the way maybe a hat makes our kids feel.
Okay, and Gretchen, you had an example about photo day. Did you have to specify in the 504 that they should let substitutes know, or how does the school let vendors or substitutes know about the 504 plan? This person says, I'm aware teachers know, but how does all of the staff become aware to prevent uncomfortable situations?
I didn't specifically, ask for that. I just kind of made the staff, that he was in the middle school at that time when that happened. I made them aware of what had happened. And I think, you know, any teacher, I'm not sure how they communicated it, whether it was, you know, on the class list, they had some kind of way to indicate that he had a 504 plan, and that you can click on it, like I think Jen said, or Heather said, for the attendance. So I didn't write anything specifically for like picture day or not, but it hadn't happened again the following year. And he has hair now, so it's a little bit different because he hasn't really needed to wear that hat in the last couple of years. So
Judy, can I speak on that as well?
Of course.
So what I've done, my son does not wear hats, but I always like to make sure that I notate it somewhere. So like when we have the slip for picture day, I will notate it on there. Like if my son wants to wear a hat, I highlight it. So I just kind of make notes everywhere, especially if it's going to a vendor of the school. I just make them aware in case the teacher forgets. So yeah, if anything like that, like you make a note, or if you know that's going to be picture day, I recommend like emailing the teacher, or yeah, that's what I would do.
We do have someone who is an attendee and has also informed us that educators keep comments in PowerSchool, Google Classroom, Schoology, and various digital books where attendance is taken. So as Jen mentioned, if you want to let them know ahead of time to make a note on there, that is a great option to do that as well. Is there any a downside for a student to having a 504 plan? It's a no. And this isn't a question, but I thought it was a great comment, and just to add great advice. This attendee mentioned, it's not a question, but I've asked that my daughter be permitted to go to the bathroom as needed to check her wig placement or to retouch her eyebrows. She's 16 and has alopecia universalis.
A 504 can be used for that. And there's also someone else who asked if they could be excused from swimming unit during PE.
Yes.
That would be another thing that the 504 would outline. So both of those things, if there are certain things that your child needs that alopecia, permits them from just that they need to do to feel as somebody else just naturally does, any of that would be under a 504. So eyebrows or wigs, great things to mention, because they're things that as someone who has universalis, boy, I would never think of those things. So interesting how we all have such different stories.
Yeah, and there's not a limit on the 504 plan. You can have as many accommodations that your child needs in order to, make them successful and make, just to ease their peace of mind. So the sky is the limit on what accommodations your child needs.
So with that said, I have somebody asking, I teach at the school my child goes to and was told we could not send a letter home to the other students in her class to educate them on her condition because it may scare the other students. She'll go to middle school next year, and I worry about a whole new population of students and teachers who aren't aware of her condition. How can a 504 help with educating classmates?
I would start by asking, was this the teacher or the principal that told you this? And I would go to whoever was above it with receipts, because that is not okay, like at all. If that was a teacher, they could be fired because of something like that. Like, that's disgusting.
So as Jen mentioned, I would say, that is something we can add about creating awareness in the classroom as well, would be to add it into that 504 plan.
Mm-hmm.
And great, and as Heather mentioned, documentation, documenting all of this. Okay, so here's another question. Great information on 504 plans. Thank you, especially for high school with so many different teachers. Does anyone have experience related to bullying related to alopecia that they may want to share? It's very difficult sometimes to get teachers and administrators to address it because they feel it's normal for kids to tease. So it's disappointing when it's that reaction. Have you all had any experience with the bullying, your child experiencing bullying? And how did this help? Maybe perhaps the 504 plan has also helped as well with this.
My son, he had bullying, but I think the 504 plan has helped him, immediately have access to the counselor, and then make sure that he has that teacher and emotional support so that he can feel comfortable going to his teachers to let them know that he's been bullied. And then they have that conversation with the other student. I know there was this one child that my son did not go to another teacher. His friend actually did. And then they all kind of got in a group, did like a little mediation and kind of educated that other student on what alopecia is. And Kaysen, my son, was able to kind of explain to this other student, like, why that hurt his feelings. And so that I think it's just more about education, but that's where the 504 plan came in, is where we have that teacher and counselor support to kind of mediate that between the students.
Great, thank you.
And
Gretchen?
then for my son in high school, he has some favorite teachers that he may not even have a class with, but he could feel comfortable going to, talk to them. And it hasn't really happened in high school. It was more in middle school for him. But if he had a teacher that he was comfortable with to go talk to, or a counselor, we didn't have a 504 plan at that time, but he was able to talk to a teacher that remediated the situation right away. And I didn't really hear too much more about it after that.
Great, thank you. And with that said, somebody had made a comment of, sounds like there's issues with school staff, so perhaps more than bullying from other kids. So perhaps can educating the adults at school help with or without a 504? And it sounds like all of you are in agreement that that is the best option, you know, starting there with educating administrators and teachers. Okay, and we have there's been a good comment also requesting a buddy that is supportive in their class can be on the 504 plan. Somebody made that comment. I think that's a great addition for somebody to add on there. We do have another one. We have another question. Somebody talked about a book. I believe Jen, you mentioned reading a book. What is the name of the book that you read to the classroom?
Oh gosh, it's a Beanie Ball Caps and Hats, I believe. It's on Amazon. My son, when I went on Amazon to try to find books on alopecia for boys, there is not a whole lot. And so I actually found this one, and he seemed to kind of really like this one. There's others on there, but this one was the one that we picked out. And it was just about a boy who had alopecia, and then there was a new kid that came to the school, and he was kind of like alone by himself, and they just kind of became best friends. So it's an amazing book. Highly recommend it.
Great, thank you. Somebody did ask, how did you organize a local support group? We're creating one organically right now with kids we've met randomly. I don't really want to advertise it on the local mom page. Jen, you can, and I know I could probably answer some of this, but I'd like for you to, you know, detail how you got that started, the support group.
Yes. So when my son first was diagnosed, I kind of was all over the place. I was looking at like, what can I do to help my child? Because it was out of my control. And so I kind of looked around my area, and there was no support groups. And so I went on the NAF website and saw that there wasn't any support groups in my area. There was one in Houston. And we actually, I got in touch with Judy and kind of told her that, you know, I kind of wanted to start this. I went to the support group in Houston just to see how that support group leader ran hers. And then I think it was a month later, I just, I think we advertised it. And then I was getting some calls, and my first meeting, I had 7 families show up. It was amazing. So
Yes, and as Jen mentioned, there is an application. If you would like to start a local support group in your area, there's an application that you fill out. Jen's support group is it's specific to a children's support group. So we have general support groups for adults, and then we have the children's support group that is mainly focused for families. And as a children's support group, the leaders need to have a child with alopecia. So it's an actual easy process. You start with an application and then a vetting process, but we still need a lot of support group leaders in the US. So if you're interested, you can always look it up. You can email me at judy@naf.org and we can get you started. And the name of the book, we have the title of the book. It's Beanies, Ball Caps, and Being Bald. Different Isn't Bad. Different, it's just different. So it is available on Amazon. We do have another question. I'm wondering within the 504 plan if there are accommodations, suggestions anyone has asked for regarding the anxiety and stress my son feels in addition to him being able to wear a hat. His anxiety because of alopecia universalis, he is going into 10th grade, is daily, and his teachers often do not take into account how much this condition affects his day-to-day learning. Listening to Jen, we are mainly trying to get teachers to recognize the stress levels and also that he is now on JAK inhibitors that affects his digestion, attention, etc. So any suggestions, anyone like what to add to the 504 plan? And I know as Heather had mentioned, it's pretty easy, and Jen mentioned it's pretty easy to change a 504 plan, but any suggestions that you may have to help him with his anxiety and stress?
I think in elementary, it's probably a little bit easier. I can only imagine what, middle school and high school students go through. But I would just make sure that he's in contact with his counselor. But yeah, and also get with the doctor and have the doctor write that note, because they have to follow that 504 plan or they can get in trouble. So it's really important that you add everything that needs to be on there. So, that digestion issues, anxiety, like all of that, you want to make sure that that's on that 504 plan. And I actually have a copy of my son's 504 plan. I keep it on me and I keep it in his backpack. So if he's ever questioned, he knows where it's at and he pulls it out.
Great, thank you. Anything else, Heather or Gretchen, you'd like to add? Heather, your experience as in the past school?
I think that it depends on what the policies are. Sometimes, especially if it's stressful, maybe being able to have some type of like a stress ball or something that they could use with their hands and know that they can have something like that, dependent on what the school's policy is for bathrooms. Like I was a middle school teacher and I was pretty strict about how many times you could go to the bathroom within a quarter. So if there's that type of parameter, he could potentially get some type of, pass that if he's feeling stressed out, if he needs to go, take a breather, do something that he's able to. So things like that, beyond having someone like Jen said, I think to talk to as well. I know I had students when I talked that if they started to feel anxious, they could go and just go to the counselor's office. And so they didn't have to ask me, they just would get up and leave. And that was just part of what the 504 was. And I knew that. So I knew if they got up and left, I hoped that that's what they were doing.
Yeah, I think it's just really dependent on what your child would want to do as like something that would help relieve stress. For some kids, it's taking that motor break or going for a walk in the hallway or just leaving or having some sort of chewing gum or having something in their mouth, a piece of candy or whatever. I think you just need to be really specific on what your child preference is and what would help calm them, because it's different for everybody.
My son's teacher this year, she's been kind of supportive. I do not have this in his 504 plan, but I will probably add it just for next year. But she allows him to have a fidget spinner or some kind of fidget toy. She actually has some quiet ones, so that's really nice because it's not interrupting the class time. But you might want to look into that as well.
Great, thank you. I think we have probably just a little bit more time for just a few more questions. This next one says, my son will be starting middle school and has a 504 plan in place. The counselor has been helpful with allowing him to wear a hat and have access to the counselor. I mentioned that I would want to give information so that others could be educated and aware of alopecia areata, but he mentioned it could be fuel for fire. What are your thoughts? Should I try to give more information for the school to be more aware, or would it give it more attention to my son? And I'm adding, you know, and how do you educate the adults who need it?
Oh,
Sorry, go ahead, Heather.
I was just going to say, I would also educate yourself in just kind of, I mean, I really, I want Jen to do this because I feel like she's more poised in these situations. I kind of get a little fire under my belly when this is the second person that has had, I just can't. But I would look at language as far as, you know, what is the school district's policy? I would go above these people and look at the school district. I would call someone at the school district. And if you're having trouble at the school, go to their boss, because that's obviously a culture within the building that is being led by someone and created by someone above. So I would look to the school district.
So one thing that, yeah, with the school district, I had to call, I think I contacted Student Affairs. And let me just say that this lady at Student Affairs, some of the things that I would tell her, she was shocked. Because a lot of the schools also can have their own set of like rules. But they have to be approved by the district. And so at this other school that my son was at, there was rules in place that were not approved by the district. And this person was trying to run that by me. And I was like, I don't think so. So Student Affairs was my friend for about 6 months. And they're on your side for any of your needs. I mean, I really felt the support from them. And then as far as educating the students, I mean, the staff, I actually went to the NAF website and they have a Alopecia Areata school guide. And I started with the teacher. And actually the last year, his teacher sent it to the entire school. It did not, did it draw attention to my son? No, but does everybody know who he is now? Yes. Do all the teachers say, "Hey, Kason"? Yes. And that just makes him feel special. I mean, granted, he's in second grade. So, but yeah, everybody knows his name. And he's just, you know, he just feels the love. So I don't think that it would draw much attention to them other than, you know, yes, the staff may know who your child is, but it can be a blessing in disguise.
And that's also something you don't necessarily need permission for. You could go onto the school website and look under staff and gather everyone's emails from there and send out the NAF documents just to all of the teachers with a message saying, you know, hi, my name is so-and-so. My son or daughter, you know, has alopecia. If you don't know what that is, this, you know, it's an autoimmune disease you might see him in the hallway. This is, you know, they don't have hair. This makes them unique and special. And if you see them, you know, make sure they're feeling confident in school. And if anyone asks questions, this is what you answer. That's your prerogative as a parent to advocate. And that's why the email addresses are on that school website.
Great, thank you. And Jen mentioned NAF School Guide. We do have a NAF School Guide, and we've updated our school guide and we're finalizing it as we speak, so that if you've registered for this webinar, you will get a copy of a brand new school guide, which will contain a lot of helpful information on 504 plans and bullying and other helpful information for school preparation. And of course, we've run out of time, but ladies, I do want to give you, if you have any final words, quick final words that you'd like to add to share with our attendees today.
Keep doing what you're doing. You're amazing parents.
Yeah, just be the voice for your child too. Sometimes they're not wanting to speak up and, you know, advocate for your kid and do what you need to do to make them successful.
Yes, and just educate yourself, educate your children, educate, the other parents, siblings. It's just really important that they're all educated and just be that advocate for your child.
Thank you. And this wasn't a question, but somebody sent a comment through our questions that said, "Thank you, ladies. This was a much needed call after our first day of school. Love and hugs to all of you and your little alopecia warriors." So thank you, ladies. I'm going to share my screen just to end our webinar. It was such great information. So I do appreciate everything that you shared, your stories. But we do want to mention now, before we end, we do have Alopecia Areata Awareness Month is just around the corner, and there's no better way to support the alopecia areata community than registering to walk on September 28th. Join thousands around the country on one day to shine the brightest light on alopecia areata, raise funds, and help the world understand that it's not just hair. Anyone, anywhere can be a part of the Walk for Alopecia. You can join one of our walk sites around the country or walk wherever you are. And I believe Jen actually is leading one of our walk sites in Austin. And please scan this QR code or visit naf.org /walk for more information, or email us at walk@naf.org and we will help get you started. Of course, thank you again to our panelists and to you in the audience for joining us today. Please share your feedback on today's webinar and help us plan future presentations. A link to a short survey will pop up in your browser window at the end of the webinar. We'd really want to hear your feedback. It's appreciated. And join us for our next webinar, Genetics and Alopecia Areata, What We Know. Alopecia areata is believed to have a strong genetic basis, and over the past 20 years, significant advances in genetic research have led to new discoveries and important new therapies. Join Dr. Leslie Costello-Socio, research physician at the National Institute of Health, as she provides an overview of the key findings on genetics research so far. She will summarize the genetic methods used in these studies and discuss why there isn't a single genetic test for alopecia areata. She will also explore the challenges for future research in this area. And there is a lot happening at NAF. And how can you keep up? You can subscribe to our email list and get regular updates on breaking alopecia areata news and research, our monthly NAF electronic newsletter, and along with notices about upcoming webinars and other programs. So if you're not on our list, please scan the QR code here to enter your email address to receive our emails. And don't forget that NAF offers a number of resources and programs to the alopecia areata community, including support groups, our youth mentor and legislative liaison programs, the doctor finder, clinical trial listings, as well as news and webinar links and how to get involved. To learn more about NAF and other resources we offer, please visit naf.org or email us at support@naf.org. This concludes today's webinar program. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you on our next webinar.